It was once said to us in some very profound advice that we should be of good cheer. The advice was, be of good cheer. Now I wonder whether any of us in this room, or any of those of you listening to this tape, are capable of following the command, be of good cheer. Now either it was said because it was possible, or it was said just to encourage, or what. The fact is, it is possible to be of good cheer in a different way in which you now consider the words. Anyone can laugh at a joke. Anyone could have a feeling of well-being, a feeling of happiness when things are going well. You can even have a feeling of happiness when things are going badly, can you not? Huh? Don't you feel good when things go badly? Of course you do. You've got something to occupy your mind, to preserve the illusion that there is someone there to feel bad about this event or of that future or whatever. So we'll connect this for now with a topic that was brought up before the meeting, which is simply the idea of the enjoyment of suffering. Do I have that correct, more or less? I'll ask you a question. Can you think of anything on the face of this earth more stupid, more wasteful, more mindless than to glorify a state of suffering of any kind? Physical, mental, emotional, social suffering. To repeat, can you think of anything more worthless than to find pleasure in pain? Which is what your life amounts to when you love to blab about your troubles to yourself and to other people. When you make your problems and your worries and your concerns the most important thing in your life. I'll tell you what's important to you. Your pain, your anguish, which is not criticizing it. When you suffer, you suffer. You're in hell. You're tied to yourself. You're enclosed in yourself. Don't you know what suffering essentially is? Self-enclosure. Tied to this bundle of miserable little self-references about how you're going to come out tomorrow, about how you didn't come out yesterday. What do you think hell consists of? Persistent, mindless self-reference. Which means that we're trapped by ourselves, by our memories, by our experiences, trapped there simply through ignorance that it does not have to be this way if I don't want it to be. If I want to be daring enough to explore beyond that nagging jealousy that I felt yesterday, beyond that countless an endless stream in which the world and everybody out there seems to revolve around me. Can you think of anything more dreadful than at the same time that you want everything to revolve around you, to not want it because it's such a hell? Do you see what self-contradiction consists of now? And insisting that life, your husband, your wife, your children, conform to what you feel is valuable to you, what would make you happy. This is what I insist upon, that the entire world of 5 billion people and the billions of events, crossing events, somehow take note of me and say, okay, this is what you want, we'll give it to you. Has it ever worked? Maybe, if we look closely enough, we'll see the very simple and yet very hardened error that we have made in our thoughts, which is thinking that I can exist as a demander and end up happy and satisfied. Has it ever worked? Roughly 50% of the time you got what you wanted, did you not? Roughly. And that provided a thrill, which was not happiness. It provided a thrill. And the other 50% of the things which were denied us, or people behaved badly toward us, or whatever, threw us into agony, and not knowing what to do about it, we glorified the suffering as a substitute me. My suffering me is at least something that I'm familiar with, so familiar with that I don't want anything to exist outside of it, lest I lose my hell. Take a deep breath at what was just said. I refuse to give up my misery, my jungle, my hell, my self-torment. You try it right now. Effective as of now, right now at 20 minutes to 8, you are forbidden to suffer again from anything. That's an order. Now you'll find out tomorrow or tonight that you can't do it. That you don't even understand what it means, but we can find out now a little bit. When we are purely egotistical, purely self-centered, other people in our lives, husband, wife, everyone, friends, lovers, etc., everyone exists to us in our self-centeredness as an affirmation, as a support, quote marks, of this self-reference, which means I have no conscience at all toward you at all. I don't care 2 cents about you. All I care is that most of the time you more or less confirm my ideas of what I should have, what I should be in order to be happy. So I'll put up with hell from you 50% of the time in order to get as best a deal as I think I can get out of it. Right? If it gets too bad, then I get rid of you and get someone else who maybe gives me 60% of my pleasures. Someone maybe I can dominate and be cruel with too and all that. Then I'll get 70% maybe, until he or she gets fed up with me and leaves too. So, if I can see that I have no conscience at all toward you, how can I have a conscience? I have none toward myself, because egotism, self-centeredness, this wrapped up little world where everything is self-reference, cannot have any conscience at all. I'm incapable of loving you. I don't know what love means. I'm not in that state at all. I'm in a state of demands, hoping to get a certain percentage, as we said, of what I want. And what I don't want, I'll find some way to lower the pain on that so I won't see it fully, which if I could do, I could begin to work myself out. Okay. If I can watch myself in daily action, here tonight, for example, try to see how everything I think and feel and do physically refers back to this very mysterious, strange person I call me. I can watch it operate, actually why it's going. What will they think of me if I say this? What do they think of me the way I'm dressed or my new hairdo or whatever? If I can see that everything refers back to me, you know what will happen? I will begin to feel, listen, I will begin to feel the heat of my own hell. I will begin to feel in a very personal, in a very real way, the cause of why I'm always so nervous in contact with you, so self-defensive, so wanting to impress you, which is my hell. Having seen that I believe, that I assume that the world revolves around me, I can begin to see there's nothing I can do to get rid of this hellish world of mine except to end the delusion that I am me with everything revolving around it. Finances, man or woman, sex, friendship, family life. So I'm going to have to do something of myself. This is my personal effort. I'm going to have to do something from myself to begin to break down the habit, the mechanical habit of everything happening being referred back to what I have assumed, imagined, believed is Tom Smith or Mary Jones. But that is the last thing I want to do, isn't it? That's the last. What a problem I have on my hands. I'm being asked to do something that I don't want to do. But I've had it. I've had it with feeding the lie to me 500 times a day, maybe more than that. I'm tired of feeding the lie to me that my happiness depends upon you and those events behaving in a way that makes me feel good. I'm tired of the lie, finally, because I see it as a lie. Heaven help me what I have got myself into now. I can't dream through life anymore. I can't sleep through life anymore. I can't continue to blame the exterior world anymore for the way I feel. And this has been my lifelong habit, to blame you. And you're telling me that I have to stop doing that? That I have to stop this self-reference of saying you are the cause of the way I feel? I don't want to stop doing that. I love doing that. And for every time you hear me say that, I think it 1,000 times. You have no idea of my bitterness and my hatred, my frustration. But I have to do it. I have to start practicing. That's a good word. I have to start practicing, as difficult as it is, doing things, thinking things that are the opposite of my self-reference. I have to do something that I think I already do. I can see you physically out there, and when you ask me if I am aware of you, I say yes. On the level of visual sight, I am aware of you by looking at you. You don't exist at all beyond that. So I have to find ways in my inner work to understand that there's another person out there, that I'm not the only person in this world. You're just not going to believe me. You're not going to believe me when I tell you. I'm talking to you in this room, and those of you listening to this tape. You're not going to believe me, but I'm telling you, you think you're the only human being that exists in this world. So I have to break that. I have to begin to see when the alcoholic comes up to me on the street and he has some little trinket he wants to sell. You want to buy this for $1? He wants to buy a drink with $1. He has something he found or got somewhere he wants to sell to me to get the $1. Instead of being embarrassed by it, instead of wondering whether I should buy this worthless junk or not for $1, instead of it being my self-reference, I have to get outside of myself long enough to look, for example, at a very pained, suffering, anguish-filled human being. Not in sentimentality. And maybe if I can drop my egotism 1 ounce worth, I'll be able for the first time to actually detect that there is a suffering in this world that is not mine. Maybe by looking at that man's eyes, he's desperate to sell me this trinket. He wants that $1. He's scared. He's terrified. He wants to die. And I, in my sickness, can't handle it rightly, because even in a situation like that, I self-reference and embarrassed and never even look at him. I want him to go away so I'm not embarrassed anymore and walk on. I'm not talking about whether you should give him the $1 or not. That's another matter. I'm talking about you having the courage to get outside of yourself for just 1 second, if necessary, to see that there's someone else in this world, and someone else in this world who suffers dreadfully. And that would be the beginning of conscience. That would be the beginning of you destroying the sadness, the sorrow, the pain, the hell that man lives in, and the equal one that you live in. We talk a good deal in this class about the hostility of human beings, the hatred, the violence, the malignant thoughts that go out into this world, and it's all true. That's the kind of a world it is. It's a mad world. Tonight, you give a bit of attention as we discuss these things of breaking outside of ourselves. You think for a minute, put your concentration, for now, under the idea of your own anguish, which is considerable. You want to cry, don't you? Of course you do. You all want to cry, every one of you. But your distractions are very well built up, including the distraction of loving your pain. Can you cease to love your pain long enough? Your anguish long enough? Your lies long enough to look at it in another way, to look at these tormenting feelings these feelings of strain, of being phony all day long, which you are? Can we step out of ourselves just long enough to see that this anguish, this sorrow, is a part of the falseness in which we live, a part of the false identity which we call me? So that never, never, never again do I ever refer to myself as sad. Never. You are forbidden. You are forbidden to ever refer to yourself as beaten, defeated. You to catch those self-centered, egotistical, foolish emotions as they begin to rise up, and stop them now. So that you no longer form the identity of being a sad person. A person who is so out of control, which is the same as sadness, they're all one, that you are embarrassed by the alcoholic who comes up to you, instead of handling him intelligently, because you have worked so hard on yourself and your own anguish and got rid of it, that you see him instead of judge him or react wrongly. What a horrible thing you do all day long. Let me tell you what a dreadful thing you do. You destroy everyone you meet. You come into this room with facial expressions, with beliefs, with attitudes, with inner states that destroys, threatens everyone you meet in this room. And you don't even know it. What right do you have to impose your sorrows on anyone? To use a very familiar phrase, you are monumental egotists who care about no one. And you pile it on everyone you meet in this room and in that home which you help to make a hell of, and everyone else you meet. You walk down the street of this town or wherever you live, someone sees the expression on your face and you've scared him. How cruel you are to scare people by you having a scared expression on your face. I told you you have no conscience. You don't care about him or about her because you have no idea of what it means to care properly for yourself. You take exactly the same negative, hostile attitude toward others as you unconsciously take toward yourself. You hate yourself, you hate others. That's very simple, elementary psychology. So what is your attitude toward yourself? I mean a higher attitude, not a surface one, not a flattering one or a condemning one. How do you actually feel toward the person that you go around with all day long, that you have to live with all day long, 24 hours a day? What attitudes, what viewpoints do you have toward this person? Now I'll tell you what to do. You drop them all, because they're all false. There's no need for them whatever. There is a need to take care of the physical body. There's a need to take care of the mind. But there's no need to be concerned for yourself at all, because you're not there. There is no one there for you For you, for myself. There's no one there to be concerned about. And this is your hard work to probe this, to understand what it means, until you begin to see a miracle of God. You begin to see yourself changing inwardly in front of your own eyes. You begin to understand the hoax that you've played on yourself. You begin to understand that all this self-reference was nothing more than a habit that you thought was necessary to your psychic survival, and incredibly, instead of ensuring your psychic survival, it ensured your misery. Right? What we thought was protecting us was destroying us. The reverse will also be seen. You'll finally see that what you thought was destroying you is your salvation. How can I live without my strong religious convictions? How can I live without my concealed violence? How can I live without my phoniness? As if it can be called living to begin with. It's a pretty miserable state, isn't it? The confusion itself is enough to drive you mad. And all these things we've talked about up until now have been thoroughly understood. This will give you an intelligent base upon which to change the kind of a human being that you are inwardly, which will in turn change the way you act, live outwardly. Change your relationship, if you change your relationship to yourself, to your real self, you'll change your relationship to everything and everyone else. Then you won't be scared of that person in the car next to you. You say you're not scared of him or her. Yeah, you're very scared. You're very scared that he or she will see through you for one thing. That person in the home or the world. Wouldn't it be nice to live without any self-protective ideas at all? Listen to what I said. Wouldn't it be nice to live without any self-protective ideas at all? Which is a state of high intelligence, in which you lack all ambition to conquer the world. You want to conquer the world? What a nightmare. He that loseth his life shall find it. What have you called your life up till this point? It hasn't been life at all, has it? It's been misery. It's been not even knowing how to behave properly in this room during the break. You don't even know how to behave properly without tension in this room during the break. And if you don't believe me, you watch yourself shortly. Consciousness of the hell within is the beginning of putting out the fire. But if you're asleep, what I have said will have no meaning to you at all. You'll go out of here and go back to your misery. You have an opportunity, starting with the break, to watch the tension you're in when that person comes up and talks to you, or you accidentally bump someone, or you see someone in the room you'd like to talk to, but you're afraid to. You have an opportunity to begin to put an end to the unconscious misery in which you presently live, which you call your life. You have an opportunity to break out of the prison, to smash out of it, and to stay out of it. We'll discuss this and have questions and answers after the break. So let's have a break now. A question was asked during the break regarding guilt. Guilt. So we'll go into that a little bit. Then we'll have open discussion. When you feel guilty about something, when you feel guilty about anything, first of all, try to bring the time factor into it. The time factor into it. If you can all think, and deliberately do so, this is deliberate thinking now, try to think of something you did a few years ago, 5 years, 10 years, in which you know very well you behaved very badly toward another person. Okay? You behaved badly, correct? Think of it, deliberately think of it now. Now try to see whether you feel guilty about it now. Do this, actually do this. Get something pretty bad. And see whether you still feel guilty, feel bad about it. Remember that awful thing you did that hurt that other person, made him cry, made her cry? Remember? You remember. All right. The time factor. The event certainly happened. Your memory tells you that you behaved very badly toward this other person. Now, listen to this. It makes no difference really from reality's viewpoint whether the event happened 20 years ago or 5 seconds ago. It makes no difference at all, because the memory that you have of this event, which may have made you feel guilty, as you recall it, the memory you have of it is not the event itself. The memory of it is not it now, because you are not now. You don't exist now as a memory of what happened 5 seconds or 20 years ago. As a matter of fact, if you could see it, if you could live it, you would be, listen, free and perfectly innocent now. But you think about that event and connect it with me. I was dreadful 5 seconds or 20 years ago. Having said I, you create the illusion that there is an I now, as there was a guilty I 20 years ago, and now that reactivates time, memory, and you say, I did a dreadful thing 5 seconds or 20 years ago. That's a lie. You don't exist, and you didn't even do it 5 seconds or 20 years ago. What happened is that you, as a human being, in a state of sleep, of unconsciousness, permitted yourself to be taken over by a hostile force, a dreadful force, a negative force, that took over your mouth, that took over your emotions, that took over your mind, that took over your physical fist maybe, took you over and caused this bit of the expression of God to forget who he or she really was, to be taken over and made you behave badly. If you really see that you don't have any identity that lives in time, then you could remember the event without you saying, I did it, because that is a lie. You didn't even do it then. You were taken over and it did it in your name. But because you want to be somebody, You want to be somebody who wanted to win something 20 years ago and it didn't work out, so you flared up and got mad and were cruel to that other person because you wanted to be somebody. You permitted these negative forces to take you over. In order to preserve the illusion that you were somebody, anybody, a guilty person or any kind of a person, in order to preserve that, you go into guilt so that you can say, I am guilty. Why don't you die? Why don't you die to the illusion that you are anyone at all? Why don't you have the courage to die to the guilt, to give it up? That just drop it right now. Drop it. You will find that you no longer exist, which is being born again, which is true life, which is liberty, which is out of the cage. So feeling guilty is simply another false move that we fall into because we don't understand what we're doing against ourselves and against the rest of the world. Now, seeing that we behave badly is quite a different thing than falling into guilt over it. I am conscious that that was a wrong thing to do against me, therefore against you. Against you, therefore against me. How can it be divided? I burn myself with hatred, I burn you. I burn you, I burn myself. It's all one thing. Have the courage to give up guilt. Just drop it. You'll find a tremendous resistance to it. Because the ego self, the vanity self, doesn't want to give you up that easily. It's had you too long. It likes cracking the whip over you and seeing you suffer. It likes taking you over and making you the instrument for the suffering of other people. First it gets you, then it tells you to pass on your pain to someone else, which you gullibly follow and destroy both yourself and the other person. Does that make it clearer, Lorraine?
Yes, thank you.
We're in open discussion for a long time, if you'd like to ask questions or make a comment or just discuss things. But we don't have to rush. Yes.
One thing about this, Vernon, is there an element of the desire not to be found out in this perpetuation of the guilt?
Yeah.
The fear of being discovered or found out or...
Yes. And even being found out by yourself. You understand, if I have an image of being good and I remember how bad I was 20 years ago, I don't want to see that. I don't want to find myself out, you see. The secret of internal success is to find yourself out thoroughly so that there's neither side. Neither I'm a bad person nor a good person. Because if you think you're good, you'll think you're bad and vice versa, right? We're destroying the opposites down inside there. So it's very important to see all sides of this and not identify with any of them. Yes?
When you meet the alcoholic on the street and you are embarrassed, you just want him to get away from you. Now that's true and it's happened to me, but I don't understand exactly why I feel that way.
Who will explain why she feels that way and why you feel that way? The alcoholic comes up and he's pathetic. There's no question about that. No question but that he's suffering, and no question that he's counting on that dollar to buy him the drink he needs. No question about that. Why are you embarrassed by it? You're the cause of that man being drunk. You're part of the responsibility if you're embarrassed. You understand what that means? You're on his level. Your level contributes to his level. Why do you suppose you're embarrassed? What are you afraid of when you see him? What are you afraid of when you see him coming up? You know he's coming up.
Yeah.
Don't you? You know he's coming up.
Yeah.
And already you're wondering how to handle it.
How to get away from it.
Why?
I'm not sure.
You're afraid.
But What am I afraid of?
Find out. You're afraid of nothing. Your imagination is working. He's a threat to you? If he was a physical threat, that would be instinctive and proper fear, right? Where's just, he's not a physical threat. Why are you afraid? Go ahead. Jim.
I think it's because I would dislike him. I would hate him. There's something in me that would hate him, and I think my Christian morality would come up too.
Does his defeat remind you of your defeat? Huh? Did we get it?
God go I.
Say that.
There, but for the love of God go I.
Good enough. We want to push it out. Get it out of our mind.
I was just going to say that I identify with.
Yes, of course. Of course.
I was reading in your Power of Supermind, it says when you go to do something that you dislike, do it with your mind and forget about the emotions. But then the difficulty is in separating the two.
Okay, how many of you can be made frightened by a sinkful of unwashed dishes? Now look, you resent those dishes, don't you? Your precious, valuable time. You have something much better to do with it. What? You love those dishes.
I do not.
You're putting emotion into it where emotion doesn't belong. You put love into what you're doing at the moment you're doing it and see if there can be any unpleasantness in you. You love what you're doing at the moment you're doing it.
I don't want to do anything that doesn't give me a feeling of I. Doing the dishes doesn't. I'm nobody when I'm doing the dishes.
That's good. We don't want to do anything that doesn't give us a thrill. Yes, Dorothy, who is giggling.
And we say to every dish, don't you know who I am?
You're the slave of a sink full of dishes. Gee.
I noticed this week, the other night, that rather than doing them, I either am going to or am afterwards. And I thought, why am I always not there then? And took a deep breath and tried to wash them very slowly and just be there then.
That's good.
Getting back to the drunk Vernon. No, I have had this happen, and like you said, don't get involved, like sentimental, like I could see, I felt sorry for him, and I knew, in retrospect, I know that is not right.
You should say that as if you doubt your own words.
Well, I guess I don't know what the right attitude would be. I guess I'm still on.
You're not going to think it out.
No, I guess not.
You understand that?
Yeah.
You're not going to think it out. Start with that, Zena. But you can't.
Stay all free, one tree.
you always embarrassed or made nervous by people who have lost control of their lives in one way or another? Someone cries in your presence. Do you get embarrassed or nervous or sentimental or wondering what to do or feel helpless that you can't do more? Don't you understand that your total understanding of that situation is the one and only thing you can do for that human being? I said your understanding. Now, do you think he wants your understanding, that alcoholic? Do you think that woman who's having the time of her life, behaving like a hysterical idiot, do you think she wants your understanding? No. No. Don't you dare give it to them. Now, you listen. Sleep is a very treacherous state. Are any of you capable of being treacherous to other people? Huh? These sleeping people, are capable of betraying you in one way or another. Don't you ever dare get sentimental toward a lost human being. They'll catch you in the alley at night, and then you'll see whether they have a conscience. Then you see what your false sympathy drew you into. This is not hardness. This is intelligence, which is love. Don't you know that love is understanding, that the vast majority of human beings want nothing to do with understanding? Now put all the pieces together at once. Walk all around the building. Look at it from the west side, the north side, from down top. Look from it from the basement up, so that you see the whole picture instead of our conditioned side. If 10 people are walking down the street and the same alcoholic comes up, there'll be generally negative reactions, but specifically variations in them. One might give him a buck and walk away quick so he wouldn't have to look at him. Someone else might just stand and listen to him talk, listen to the alcoholic talk because he felt his duty, or he's enjoying the spectacle, enjoying that alcoholic's pain. Or if you're a do-gooder, you'll give him a little tract that says, Jesus saves, and you're not saved yourself. Yes.
Could this be socially comparable, this emotional state to...
Would you speak louder, please?
Would this be socially comparable to a paraplegic or somewhat of a person who, when they have these telethons and things like this, people get embarrassed
Yes.
as they make their contributions because they don't really want to see that side of it?
Yes. We're talking about our reaction to whatever is presented to us. We're watching our state. Yes.
The sympathy and pity are not understanding. They're just another type of egotism.
Say that again, please.
The sympathy and pity for the lost person are not understanding. They're just another type of my egotism.
Yes, it is indeed. I should say it is. Yes. Well, just watch your state. Watch what's going on. Watch your discomfort. Why should you be in any kind of discomfort at all? And if you're seeing it clearly, without an eye, you will not be in discomfort. You will have, I will tell you, you will have many right reactions. One of them will be authentic compassion, which is also the most intelligent state you could ever have. You may walk right by that man. A lot depends on the exterior circumstance. Of course it does. If the man is actually starving, you have a loaf of bread, you give him a loaf of bread or whatever. There are many things to say about the particular circumstance.
are we sensing then that condition in ourselves and reacting to really to what we feel that
You see his weakness. You see his weakness. It embarrasses you. You don't want that man to remind you of what's going on inside of you. You may not be an alcoholic. How do you take your pain out? How do you take your lost condition out? Through hostility, through hatred, through bitterness, through jealousy, through ambition? How do you take your hatred out, your lost condition out?
Almost like a personification of the end result of yourself if you let yourself go. You know, I think.
Is your hand up, you?
you've mentioned helplessness, feelings of helplessness when you see someone like that, and I think that ties in with false guilt that the world plays on.
Mm-hmm. They'll play on it, yeah.
Maybe there's something in me that feels I should be able to do something about this lost soul. Because I was told I should help people in need.
Mm-hmm. Egotism thinks it can do something. Right? Egotism. We're not talking about his physical condition, of course. If he's cold, give him a coat or something.
I'm wondering, would another alcoholic, in a sense of accidental awakeness, because he's been in that same condition, treat him rightly?
An ex
Yeah.
who has found, well, if he has awakened, he would treat him rightly, of course.
No, I meant like accidental awakeness, not a person who wants to be conscious. Because he's been in that state, he would be the one who would know how to treat him.
Well, look, let me repeat what I just said a minute ago. We can be egotistical, egoholics, right? We can be vanity-holics. We can be ambition-holics. We can be self-centered holics. So we would understand any other kind of a holic.
At the beginning of the meeting, you spoke about self-reference, and you said we had to start thinking and doing things that were opposite to our self-reference.
Uh-huh.
Can you give us a few simple things?
Sally, would you repeat to those who weren't here at that time the phrase, tell us all about it, tell me all about it? Would you explain that? Did I startle you, Sally?
When someone particularly boring wants to talk to you and you don't want to have anything to do with them, or even to listen, you have to get out of yourself and say to the person, tell me all about it. This is one way, right?
Did that answer your question?
Okay.
Remember that. Put yourself in the other person's place. Let them blab, not because you're interested in it. You don't have to be interested in their trip to Mount Everest or wherever they went. But you have to be interested in watching your own reaction, but you don't get to talk about your trip to Mount Himalaya. Watch your resentment that you are not the star of the scene. How many of you blab your troubles to other people? Come on, let's see all the hands. How many of you blab your trouble? How many of you wish you had someone to blab your trouble? You know, if I may say so, and I may, I could give a talk all 3 weekend meetings for 6 months, 8 months, on the subject of self-centeredness, purely hitting hard on it all around, and I would see the same self-centered conversations right in this room during the break after the 8 months.
Yeah.
Right? So where have we failed, Zena?
Well, I've been noticing, like, people's conversation, and it's, you know, I, and me too.
Do you do that, Zena? Do you talk about yourself? I'm going to ask your husband.
Yeah, I do.
Can you, look, are you capable of stopping your monologue, your monotonous monologue, right in the center of telling everybody about what you're going to do tomorrow? Stop it right in the middle and see how bored you are with it. I'll guarantee you'll see boredom yourself of yourself. You really don't want to do that, but you know nothing else to do with your mouth or your energy. Why don't you stop blabbing and find out what to do with this energy that's been wasted in blabbing? If you're not talking to someone else, it's mental blabbing, right? How many mental blabbermouths do we have in the room? That is what is known as self-reference. Stop it, break it. Right in the middle of telling someone else this fascinating story of your life, stop and ask them for the story of their life. And be prepared.
You mentioned something about people crying, and then you mentioned betrayal at the same time. I didn't get any connection between the two.
Oh, I don't either, Rod. What are you talking about?
I was trying to
Try again.
I was trying to reconstruct what you said about crying.
Crying?
Yeah, you cautioned us to be aware
Yes.
of people who might cry in
Yes.
depression.
Yes.
And somehow betrayal got into the same subject.
You can't make a connection?
And I can make no connection.
Okay, we'll make a connection. How many of you have ever cried bitterly? Bitter tears. How many of you, come on, let's see. How many of you men have ever cried? We know about you ladies. All right. Now, using memory properly, besides your sorrow, what other state did you have in this crying that you might be able to pull out of memory? Jim will do it.
Anger.
Of course. Self-pity.
Violent defense.
Violent defense, yes. There's a lot of violence in crying. Now, do you see the connection? A violent person will take revenge at the nearest target. Usually someone he loves. Quote marks. Right, Dorothy? Crying is a dreadful state. You will have nothing more to do with it. Now, you've taken the pleasure out of billions of people on earth. That one of the chief pleasures there was a big funeral on television a couple years ago. A famous man had died. Very famous man of a famous country. He died naturally. And the funeral began fairly calmly. The hearse coming down the street and the soldiers and the mobs, just millions of people, I guess. And gradually, as the thing went on and on and on, the women started getting out their handkerchiefs. It was on television. You saw people get their handkerchiefs out and they started crying and they threw themselves on the coffin. They were sobbing and they were bumping into each other. It gradually turned into an insane, panic-filled mob of weeping, screaming, hollering, mad, insane human beings. You see any sanity, any intelligence in that? All for the sake of self-dramatization. Look how much I loved him. Yes.
Would some of it also have been all these pent-up things that they were able to release in this direction?
They were waiting for the occasion. Yes. Some people can hardly wait for a tragedy, so they express their great sorrow. Are you beginning to have some idea of the importance of no longer lying about your inner state, no longer lying about it, but seeing it as it is without identifying with it, without saying I to it, without feeling proud or ashamed of it? See it impartially, standing aside and looking at it in order to weaken its hold on us. That means there has to be a part of you and a part of me that is not a part of this mad stream, that doesn't want to be that anymore, that can stand aside and be the witness of what is happening inside. When you're witnessing that, you are not that. That small part is not that. One part of you is observing another part of you. A mind can see the emotions, for example. Even your physical eyes can see the body, can't it? You can see how you're gesturing. See what you're like without thinking that it represents you, because it doesn't. It seems to represent you, but since it's false, it causes all our pains and all our contradictions, all our fears and all our hostilities. The more I persist in standing aside and looking back at what's going on inside of me, which takes an awful lot of courage, doesn't it? Have you ever seen things in yourself that shocked you, that hurt you, that you wanted to scream and run away and say, that's not me? Well, in one sense it is not, in another sense it is, because it's the only you that there is at that moment, at that time. But God does not see you as this hateful person. God is too pure to behold darkness. God does not see you as that, and neither should you. And this one small part of you that is observing is the beginning of that freedom from identification of calling yourself a terrible person. Evil loves to see evil and react fearfully to it. Evil loves to see evil and react fearfully to it. The observer, the watcher outside, is not part of this evil, therefore it can see it as you might see a hawk fly by, a vicious hawk fly by, can see it without saying, that is me. I am not that hawk. In reality, in truth, you are not that hawk. So see it fly by and let it go. Practice this all day long, because it's such a difficult thing to do. We're not used to doing it. Find opportunities all day long to do it 20 times, 30 times. You'll gradually get a different feeling toward yourself, toward the kind of a person that you are, which is the beginning of change, the beginning of real command over yourself. Obviously, we have no command as long as all these things are going on unconscious inside of us and unchallenged inside of us. We're challenging our own darkness. And you can win. You can win because God, truth, reality, has already won. You see, has already won. This is not in time. Truth doesn't live in time. The minute I see it, I have it. Repeat. The minute I see it, I have it. The minute I see it, I am it. You love to condemn yourself for being bad, for thinking those thoughts? You know those thoughts you thought today? You remember them? Those bad thoughts you had today? What were they about? Do you know what they were? Those bad feelings you had? Didn't you know that you identified with them and said, I am terrible for thinking those thoughts? I shouldn't have those thoughts at all? How are you going to get rid of them? Certainly not in the way you're doing it now. How are you going to get rid of the torment of those thoughts? There is a way, which is not to say I to them, which is not to love to be them, which is not to have one dark part look at another dark part and condemn it, but to be above the whole business. Let it flow. Look at it and let the whole thing flow right through you without trying to stop it at all. Don't try to stop it. Just look at it and let it go of itself, which it will do. It's its nature to invade you and leave you, but not if you grab it and say, how horrible. That stops it, so to speak, or rather makes it vibrate inside of you.
I like to ask you something. I'm with a great amount of people throughout the day, sometimes for several hours. And everybody is speaking of different things, what bothers them or what they enjoy. And many times I don't say too much to it. But then when I come home and am alone by myself, all those things tumble on through my mind for a while, like an uncontrolled record player. Is it simply I'm out of control?
Don't you understand that the record player was also playing at the same time you were with these people, but you didn't know it?
I haven't thought.
Are you able to look at the record player at the time it's playing? Listen to what that sad song, that screechy song it's playing. Can't you look at it at the time it's playing? Look, to go off into a daydream with these people, right? Mm-hmm. To go off into a daydream is not the same thing as... To go off into a daydream is simply a distraction of seeing what is happening to your mind at the moment you're involved in the event. You said, the reason I bring this up, you said that not too much happened, but when you get home, you see, maybe you're simply distracted by the sights and sounds around you. Mm-hmm. Why don't you cut them off, so to speak, so that you can see what's going on inside your system? You'll find that you were taken up by them while you were there, as well as at home. If you could have been free of them right then, you wouldn't have been taken over when you got home, when the distractions were removed. Look, our object is to be free at 10 minutes to 9 on this Friday evening, right now, not tomorrow. How many of you feel as if you're living in a closet? Pretty miserable, isn't it? Isn't the familiarity of looking at that wall and seeing the broom hanging there and look at the other wall and seeing that old dirty robe hanging there. It's been there for 5 years. Looking at what's on the other wall. Isn't it boring? Get out of the closet. Only your own thoughts and your own conditioning is keeping you there. And how about those people hanging on the wall that you're kind of tired of looking at? Leland.
To be alive, that is to have life, means that we're accumulating, we're in the possession of energy. And in our present state, we have no idea, no feeling for how this energy could simply flow without contradiction. We have no idea of how it could be released or expressed in a natural or spontaneous manner. And yet, it's present. And because it's present, there is something in us which wants to release it, which wants to get rid of it. And in our effort to discharge it, we are in love with all of the negative emotions, all of the negative feelings that we've been talking about so far, because they are, in their own contradictory ways, means of releasing or expressing what we have called life. It's actually death, that is, it's actually self-contradiction.
Yes.
But nevertheless, if we begin to see the ways in which our life is expressed, or the ways in which this energy is released, the ways in which it is flowing, we can begin to see the nature of our actual life. That is part of our self-observation, is to see where our energy is going, what it is being absorbed in, and how much contradictory effort there is in forcing it to go in this way. It's the anxiety, it's the fear, it's the force that ruins everything.
Yes, yes, and just to add one word to that, the study of self-contradiction is of supreme importance. Write that down, please. The study of self-contradictions is of supreme importance, which is what Leland said. The misuse of energy always involves a contradiction in me, trying to keep an image alive, for example, trying to keep a so-called moral standard alive in me, which is a lie. Have any of you ever tried to be moral and resented it, for example? Huh? Did I see it? Yes, Jim.
A good illustration of what Leland was just talking about is that if you're ever in Sears, there's a display there, and there's got some hamsters, and they're running around on this little wheel. And this one here tonight was just running so fast and going nowhere.
Right. That's us.
Yeah. But it was just it's so funny. I looked at it and I started to laugh.
You said, there's me?
It's just so funny. It's just going, and not going anywhere.
All that energy wasted, not going anywhere, right?
One way of expressing this or putting it is the pressure that you're talking about. You say, make it twice as hard, make it 50 times as difficult on yourself. This goes back to also Sally's question. What we have to do is deny ourselves false outlets to the extent that we build up enough energy inwardly that finally it expresses itself in a harmonious fashion, and we get a little bit of taste of what it means to live simply and spontaneously. And then that is real progress.
Right. Right. We have the energy for it. What are we doing with it? How many, let's go around the room a little bit. Let's see some hands and just give your comments. How do we foolishly waste the energy that could be used in jolting ourselves awake? Examples. Sally. Rushing. Oh, just a little more specific, please. Unnecessary rushing. Okay.
Thinking it applies to another, and I'm going to tell them about it.
Yeah, someone else needs correction, not me.
Not knowing that you are in that state.
Good. Unconsciousness. Yeah.
Defending false attitudes or positions.
Defending false attitudes or positions is certainly a waste of valuable energy.
Daydreaming.
Daydreaming.
On boring social obligations.
Say that again.
Boring.
Boring.
Obligations.
Yeah.
Blaming others.
Blaming others.
When somebody is spewing forth negative emotions, you laugh and giggle to get out of it.
Okay. All right. A false reaction, yes.
Sexual fantasies.
Pardon?
Sexual fantasies.
Sexual fantasies. Okay.
When the phone rings, making a mental list of who you think it is and then resenting it when it's not who you...
Who you wanted? Does that happen to you, Dorothy? All the time?
Yes.
Quite a bit?
They want your debit side.
Trying to impress others.
Good.
Okay, telling others what you want to happen or what you're wishing for.
Okay.
What are these examples of?
Wastage of energy. And inattention is a wastage of energy.
Jealousy.
Jealousy.
Feelings of if only.
Feelings of if only.
Anger.
Anger, certainly.
Expecting, wanting,
Expecting, wanting, demanding.
Taking dumb trips.
Taking dumb trips. Do any of you still take dumb trips?
This was one of my most valuable lessons here.
What?
Dumb trips.
You've canceled all dumb trips?
It's a great relief that I can say on the telephone simply, I enjoy it at home, I don't want to go anymore.
I don't want to go. Very
And then
good.
for the astonishment after you are very blunt and honest with people, they come out the same way. If you tell them, why don't you come and make the effort? And they say, I actually really don't feel like going. And so you eliminate the whole con game, which went on for years before.
They're very grateful for you for breaking it. Yeah. How about feelings of helplessness? Isn't that a waste of energy to feel helpless? What's this egotism that you are helpless? I never heard of anything more self-centered than you saying that you're helpless. Helpless to understand these things, for example, these truths. Who is helpless? That's a self-description, isn't it? I'm helpless. That's self-reference, isn't it? That's a love of being negative, isn't it? That's self-dramatization, isn't it? Some people would rather feel helpless than have the eternal truth. Swallow that. Some people love feelings of helplessness more than they love the eternal truth. We'll take a couple more minutes, then stop and see you tomorrow morning at 9. Any final comments or questions? Zena?
What about thinking that you already know?
Yes, that's a dreadful one. And it's one of the most difficult ones to ever get through to a person. A person who comes into this class who says, I already know, which many do, in fact all do in their special way. They're one of the most difficult people of all to ever get through to. I already know. What's the point of listening? Nothing is more dreadful than to hear a person say, I already know. Write down a sentence, please. The very effort to understand something includes the right feeling that all is well. The very effort to understand something includes the right feeling that all is well. How prominent is the desire in all of us to simply feel right, to feel that we're in a right relationship with ourselves and with the exterior world, to simply know that wherever we are, whatever we're engaged in, that everything is just fine, that all is well, which I think you will agree is a very rare feeling in any human being, including ourselves. What we would give just to feel right, to not feel threatened by what we're going to have to do tomorrow, what we're going to have to face tomorrow, but to know that everything is okay right now, which it is. The point being this: anytime you're troubled by anything, your mind is whirling around, you suddenly feel frightened of something, you have a certain security. What is your security? Your marriage or your financial prosperity or relationship you have? When you feel that this security feels threatened and you get scared and you don't know what to do, you feel wrong, of course. I've just given you something that will make you feel right instantly. You will feel right because it is right to suddenly turn toward an attempt to understand your misunderstanding, an attempt to understand why you felt threatened. All of a sudden, you were sitting here in this room, for example, and everything seemed pretty much okay. Then someone said something, or a thought came to you, or you remembered something you heard on the news last night. All of a sudden, you're scared and thrown off this pseudo-security that you were in because you weren't aware of what was nagging at the back of your mind, in the dark corners of your mind. A major part of instant recovery is to immediately go to work in any way you like. Take your choice. And you've been given hundreds of choices of ways in which you can instantly feel right by doing something right. Doing something right would be to ask why this thought was able to take you over. Where are you so insecure you feel a certain wrong self-reference and you feel shaken, but you say to yourself, I'm going to sit back and relax physically, which alone will be a shock to me, because when I get tense emotionally, I get tense physically. I'm going to defy that by sitting down something like this and let my hands just dangle loose. Let my jaw drop a little bit. I've given myself a preliminary shock, a preliminary feeling of rightness, which can start the thing rolling toward my mind working right. Because even my tenseness is blocking my attempt to deal intelligently with this quote mark threat that passed through my mind, which I identified with, which I self-referenced with. So let's all sit quietly now. From this fresh start, this fresh physical position, I can begin to feel right, because it is right to wish to probe, to understand what this threat, what this problem is all about. Someday you will see you can always feel right by working on yourself. As simple as that. You will always feel right. There's no way you can feel wrong. If you say, okay, I'm going to stand apart from this and find out why it has grabbed me, why it has taken me over. Instead, I'm going to begin to understand it. And we'll now go into one thing we can begin to understand. How many of you feel drained by other people? Come on, raise your hand. You resent other people taking your time, taking your energy, taking your attention. In other words, you sense that their weakness, and this is a right statement, by the way, you sense that the weakness and the dependency of other people is loading itself onto you, onto your attention. They're telling you their troubles, right? They're telling you all about their exciting events that are going to happen to them in the next day. You sense that their weakness, their fear, their dependency is trying to get something from you that you don't want to give. So you go into a wrong reaction, destroying your own feeling of rightness, by the way. You go into a wrong reaction of unconsciously wishing they'd get off your back. Right? Mm-hmm. Now, why don't we do something intelligent when that happens? It happens here all the time. It'll happen during this break, by the way. But you will be so in a position of pleasure, pain over unconsciously resenting them burdening you, that you won't be able to do the intelligent thing, get the right feeling of saying, I'm going to sit back and relax and listen to that person talk. Listen to them intruding upon my private mind, my private affairs, what I want to think. And I am going to get strength from their weakness. Isn't that beautiful? You didn't know that before, did you? That people who impose on you, who drain you, can be used for your strength so that you no longer resent them draining you. And that, by the way, will be the end of their drainage of you. Your resentment is what makes it possible for them to drain you, correct? What do you think drainage is? But wishing they'd get off your back. And have you ever noticed what a strain it is to keep your face, your expression proper for the occasion? What would it express if it expressed the inner corresponding state? But you wouldn't do that, would you? And you shouldn't do it, by the way. You should not offend them because you are offended by them. Using another person's weakness for our own strength.